أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today we're covering Surah Al Nisa'a, chapter number 4 in the Quran. This is from the Quran Madani, which means it was revealed after the Hijrah to Medina. And this Quran usually covers the ayat and the surahs that talks about the regulations and the rules in Islam. And usually there is some characteristics of this Quran is very different than the Quran Makki. And this surah has 176 verses, and it was revealed around 7 surah after the Hijrah to Medina Munawwara. Surah Al Nisa'a is named after woman, and the first thing that I want to talk about is you will hear women are honored in Islam. There is a whole chapter talking about women. There is more than one chapter talking about women. I don't consider women honored in Islam because there is one chapter talking about women. But women are honored in Islam. Women are honored in Islam in multiple ways. Why to call a chapter after women that we will cover in the surah today? But before that, I want to read the first ayah in page 1 that you have. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. The first thing that you will notice that the surah started with Ya Ayyuhan Nas, and usually the Madani Quran does not have Ya Ayyuhan Nas. It's Ya Ayyuhal Ladina Amanu. So it makes you ask why the surah starts with Ya Ayyuhan Nas, not Ya Ayyuhal Ladina Amanu, because after the Hijrah to Medina there is believers who are praying, who are fasting, and they are believers. Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu. Why ya ayyuhan nas? Even the ayat that has ya ayyuhan nas after Hijrah to Medina, usually they refer to the whole mankind. So this surah, although it was revealed after Hijrah, it is addressing all mankind. How so? These regulations, although they are binding to Muslims, they are mandatory to Muslims, the message of the surah, it says that this could work for any society, for any country, for any people that may use them. So, Ya Ayyuhan Nas is alert to all people to listen to what's in these ayat and make use of them. That is the first thing, Ya Ayyuhan Nas. And then, Ittaqu Rabbakum. It asks people to follow the taqwa. To follow the taqwa. The devotion of Allah, the fear of Allah, if you will. So, I start with اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها, who created you from one soul and created from that soul its husband. So that is the surah, how the surah starts. So what is the main topic of Surah Al Nisa'a? Each surah in the Quran, no matter how long or short the surah is, there is main topic. Even the longest surah and the shortest surah. And this topic in the surah, in each surah of the Quran, if you look at the beginning of any surah and the end of that surah, there is relation. There is correlation between any beginning and any end of the surah. So let's read the first ayah, the translation, that, O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul, and created from it its mate, and spared from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah. The second time that mentioned that, Ittaqullah, fear Allah, through whom you ask one another, and the wombs, indeed Allah is ever over you an observer. So this is the ayah, start with the taqwa, asking us to have the taqwa to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I take you to the last verse of the surah to see how is it related. So we try to conclude what is the main topic of Surah Al Nisa'a, because we will not cover the whole surah today. Look at page number 2 and the verse is number 4, 176. I'm not going to read the whole surah, but the beginning of the whole ayah, the whole verse. Look at the beginning of the ayah. يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ قُلِ اللَّهُ يُفْتِيكُمْ فِي الْكَلَالَةِ إِنْ امْرُؤٌ هَلَكَ لَيْسَ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. In translation, they ask you for legal ruling, for a fatwa. يَسْتَفْتُونَكَ. Say Allah gives you a ruling concerning one having neither descendants nor ascendants or heirs, if that man dies. So the main topic of Surah Al Nisa'a, what we know Surah Al Nisa'a for is inheritance. But actually the main topic of Surah Al Nisa'a is the continuation of life. It's the continuity of mankind, which needs woman as much as it needs men. That is the main topic. The main topic is covered between the first and the last ayah. The first ayah says, اتقوا الله, who created you from one soul and its husband, its spouse. And then the last verse says that if someone dies and they have no heirs. So the beginning of the surah is telling you what? It's telling you the beginning of a creation. And the last verse telling you the end of a creation. This is the end of individual or end of a branch which represent or is a symbol for the end of mankind. This is how the first and the last ayah in the surah are related. Not just that, you will see in a minute that the beginning of the surah starts talking about how to give the money to the new generation, and the end of the surah is giving the money away from the previous generation. It can go the other way. It can go from the older, the people who pass away, if they don't have heirs, and then if they have heirs, so and so. But the way that it's in the Quran, this is the new generation, this is the beginning, and the last ayah is talking about an end. That end is the previous generation. This is the relation. This can apply to all surahs of the Quran. We may or may not get what is the main topic, especially the longer surahs. They cover many topics. But there is always one main topic of each surah that if you read between the lines, if you read and analyze the words, you will understand what the surah is talking about. So Surah Al Nisa'a is talking about one main topic. It's the continuity of mankind on earth. It is the creation of mankind, which requires people to give money and knowledge and everything to the next generation. And that has lots of details. Among those details, there is the money and the inheritance. But that is the main topic of Surah Al Nisa'a. And why it's named after woman now? Because it just brings to the Arabic culture, which did not appreciate the woman equally to how they appreciated men at that time. It just brings the attention, it shaped that society that woman is not just main part, it is 50% of that equation for the continuity of life. So the surah is named Woman, and it talks about the continuity of life of mankind. How is the creation of mankind, how we should fear Allah because He created us, and the end is, this is the end of man/mankind. This is the first ayah and the main topic of the surah. I'll go in the first ayah before I move on. Why to mention اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها. I underline the verb خلق, which means created. And the reason I underline that, خلق, it's mentioned in another surah, which I wrote in page number 2, Surah Al-Zumar, Surah 39, number 6. خلقكم من نفس واحدة ثم جعل منها زوجها. This is repeated in the Quran multiple times. One time it says خلق منها زوجها, and another time وجعل منها زوجها. And in the translation, you see that made or created, we read them the same way, especially in English. Now, there is a big difference when it's خَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, like Surat Al Nisa'a, versus جَعَلَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. Both means that he made or he created. However, خَلَقَ is an earlier stage when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam and he created Hawa, Eve. Ja'ala, usually the verb Ja'ala, he made. So he made later. How did he made later? So he's talking literally about creation of Adam and Hawa, but he's referencing us. And why not to say created? He created us as husband and wife, because we're not created as husband and wife from the moment that we were born. We're created as individuals, and جَعَلَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. If you read the translation, the Surat Al Nisa'a talks about how he created Adam and Hawa, and created from them many men and women. So it's talking about Adam and Hawa, Adam and Eve. If you go to the translation of 39:6, and read the translation, he created you from one soul, then he made from it its mate. Sound the same. And he produced for you from the gazing livestock 8 mates. It's talking about the livestock. He creates you in the wombs of your mothers. This is talking about us, about everyone. Creation after creation. Within 3 darkness, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your Lord. To Him belongs dominion. There is no deny except Him. So how are you averted? So this talk about the creation of mankind, but it's referring to us, to everyone. So the word ja'ala is like He made us in pairs, in husband and wife, after a while, after we were created. It's just the precision of the Quran need to be addressed here. So if you read it in English again, it's the same. خَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا جَعَلَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. And the last thing that I want to cover in the first ayah is يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمْ. Have taqwa to Allah. الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. He created many men and women from this pair. And اتقوا الله. Why to ask Allah? Allah asking us to have taqwa twice. The first time, it's like either you believe in Allah or you don't believe in Allah. Like either if you see the creation and the beginning of the creation, like you cannot believe 50% or 90%. Either you believe or don't believe. So if you believe that Allah created you, then follow His regulation. That's true or false. Now what about the second one? وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. And have taqwa to Allah as much as possible. وَالْأَرْحَامِ. Take care of your relatives, of the people who are blood relatives to you, especially females. Look how that's emphasized in the first ayah, in the first surah, that is called Al Nisa'a. So it's bringing the whole attention that you must take care of your relatives, especially if they are females. The word female is not there, but al-arham is a reference to the female relatives more than the men relatives. So that's how it is. Now why is that mentioned again? Because that taqwa cannot be true or false. Not everyone takes care of their relatives, of his sisters, of his mother, either yes or no. There is someone at 5% and 50% and 90% and more. So that's where the taqwa mentioned twice. And this is not the only surah that the taqwa is mentioned in the same ayah 2 or even 3 times. Because there is different levels for taqwa. But always the first level of taqwa is one time, that is true or false. You either believe in Allah or don't believe in Allah. Do you believe that Allah created that one soul and it's made, or no? That cannot be 50%. Yes or no? So yes, we believe. Then follow what's in the surah, follow all the regulations and what's in the surah of the Quran. Moving on to the second verse that immediately talks about وَآتُوا الْيَتَامَى أَمْوَالَهُمْ وَلَا تَتَبَدَّلُوا الْخَبِيثَ بِالطَّيِّبِ وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَمْوَالِكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ حُوبًا كَبِيرًا. Now, the first ayah set the stage that this surah is about continuity of life, and now it's going to talk about money and inheritance. But one thing you need to pay attention, I encourage you to read Surat Al Nisa'a in full. The ayat from 2 to 13, all of them talk about money. All of them. After that, there is no money in the surah. Although there is inheritance about the share, but there is no money, give money or take money. It's like bringing the attention when the continuity of life needs money, needs people to pass on things. That's a reality. People get sad, but the reality is after a while, what gets people going is what, their parents left or so. 2 to 13. After that, the money is not mentioned in the whole surah till the very last ayah that I just read, and that is for what? For the proportion between the beginning and the end of the surah, as I said. So this is one thing that you need to notice. After that, when the verse started talking about the money, what is the first thing that was mentioned? Is the orphans. Not anything else. The very first thing, وَآتُوا الْيَتَامَى أَمْوَالَهُمْ. Give the orphans their money. That is how important to give the orphans their money. That is the first category that was covered. وَآتُوا الْيَتَامَى أَمْوَالَهُمْ. Give the orphans their money. وَلَا تَتَبَدَّلُوا الْخَبِيثَ بِالطَّيِّبِ. Don't replace the bad with the good. Don't take the bad for the good. What does that mean? When the orphans, their parents die, and someone takes their money to take care of that money, after 10, 15 years or whenever they're adults, what they do is the person who took the money has 2 lines of business. So he will pick the business that's not giving good, and this is for my nephews. This is what their parents left for them. So this is mentioned. Don't replace the bad with the good. Give them their money, and then not to sum their money with your money in the same ayah, and don't put their money with your money unless there is later ayat that says there is some regulations for that. If you do it, then the shares are clear, but not to pick and choose the bad shares to give to them and the good shares for you. So this ayah is saying 3 things. Give the orphans their money when they're adults or when they're mature enough and they're ready to get their money. Do not take the bad money, the bad shares, the bad business and give it to them. That is haram. And the third thing, do not add their money to your money. You have business and then you got money for orphans. I'll just put this and then when they're adults, I will see what do I do. That's not encouraged at all. Keep their money aside. Yes, you can invest them, you can do that. It's coming later in the surah, but do not add their money to your money. Those are the 3 things that are mentioned in the second ayah. And then, إِنَّهُ كَانَ حُوبًا كَبِيرًا. If you don't do any of those 3, إِنَّهُ كَانَ حُوبًا كَبِيرًا. What is hub? I underlined that word in the second verse. That is a great sin. But in the Tafseer, in Ibn Kathir says, hub is a great sin that cannot be reversed. It's like a big sin that cannot be reversed. How so? If that sin is impacting the lives of others. Where did that come from? Rasulullah ﷺ in the hadith that one of the companions divorced his wife, and then the story came to Prophet ﷺ. So Prophet asked, "What is the story?" And he listened to the story, to why did he divorce his wife. And then he figured the man was wrong by doing this. So he said, what you did is a hub. So that's where the scholars agree that hub is something, it's a sin, but it's impacting others. It's not a sin like you missed the salah. So hub is something, what someone has done impacted the lives of those orphans. So do not do this. Do not give the money to the orphans. Do not take the good money and give them the bad money. Do not merge your money with their money from the aspect of that I'm going to grow up their money. These are the three things that we take away from the second ayah. Third ayah, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَلَّا تَعُولُوا. This is a very famous verse that people say that it's allowed in Islam to marry 2 and 3 and 4, which can be the case, but some people go further and say the normal case in Islam for a man to marry more than one woman. So the translation of this ayah, I'm not going to go through it because the important thing for this ayah is to understand the meaning in Arabic. First of all, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى. If you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphan. So the verse is not talking about the multiple wives. The verse, the topic of the ayah, the topic of this verse number 3 is still talking about what? About the orphans. About the orphans. In the Arabic culture, it used to be if that woman don't live alone by themselves. So if there is a teenager or a girl that her parents are gone or traveled or missed or something, she lives with relatives or she's like adopted, but there was no adoption in Arabic culture. So she lives with some other family, usually relatives. But when that girl becomes adult, then now she is a mahram for the man in the house. So they used to solve the problem by the man marry her. And when Islam mandate that there is a mahar, there is a sadaq, there is a money must be paid to the woman when the man marry them, the men figure that this girl lives in my house, so they don't pay the right for that woman. And then this ayah is really not talking about the multiple wives. It's talking about the right of those orphans who were left alone and living in a different family, that you must pay them their right. And if you don't, if you feel that you're not going to be tuqsit, I'm not going to use the word just as the translation because I don't agree that qist is justice. I'll explain it in a minute. If you feel that you will not be fair with them, what do? Then you may marry from other women. Just go marry from other women because you will have to pay all the dues. And then Islam said, if you do that, there is a limit of 2 or 3 or 4. So, hold on one second. Is it 2 or 3 or 4? Is it open? That we will explain in a second. First of all, mathna wa thulatha wa ruba' does not mean 2 or 3 or 4. Language-wise, that does not mean 2 or 3 or 4. That's agreed by all the language scholars. Sheikh Sha'rawi was one of them who said mathna wa thulatha wa ruba' does not mean 2 and 3 and 4. Mathna wa thulatha wa ruba' means groups of 2s or groups of 3s or groups of 4. It's not the same. I'll explain an example. If you tell a group of people that you can pick 2 books from that library, then that might mean that the whole group will pick 2 books. Or group of that group, subgroup will pick 2. Not everyone will pick 2. And it may mean that each person will pick 2 books. But even if it means that, there might be overlap between the books, because it doesn't specify that there is no overlapping. Does that make sense? Like when a teacher tells the students, pick 2 topics to talk about for next week. There is no mention that they may or may not overlap. The 2 or 3 or 10 students may pick the same topic. But Mathna wa Thulatha wa Ruba', if I say pick from those books, Mathna, that means each one of you must pick 2 books. There is no overlap between the 2s, and each one will pick 2. So what does that mean? That means it's of course common sense that there is no overlap between the wives, but beside that, it says that then in that society, in that country, in that generation, at that time, it is okay for everyone to have either 2 or 3 or 4, either because of the culture or because of the demographic conditions. Like, you need to know that the Arabic culture, it was unlimited. The companion of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when these ayat was revealed, it's in the Tafseer that some of them had 10 wives and more, and 15. So 4 is limiting that in the Arabic culture, that this was okay. It's not the normal case that everyone should have 4, and we are living in tough times now that we are just having 1 wife. That's not what Islam is about, not at all. And if the demographic conditions allow multiple wives, that may be because of war or because of something, so yeah, it may not be ideal, but it is the best for the whole society as a whole, for the whole country. But the point that I want to mention, it is not the normal case for a man to marry 2 or more at all, and this is not what the ayah is talking about. Something else, not just the meaning of Mathna wa Thulatha wa Ruba' in the ayah. The verse number 3 starts with wa'in. I underline that, wa'in. And this usually is translated as if. However, if you look deeper into what does in mean, I put some examples in page number 3. Look at page number 3. There is 2 things that means if or when. Those are in and idha. In and idha. So the first example, or let me explain the meaning first. In Arabic means if, like the second and the third type of the if clause in English. That is impossible to happen or very unlikely to happen. The idha is like the first type of the if clause, which means it most likely will happen in the future. And there is another meaning. Idha means in the Quran that it's encouraging us to do something very often. But on the other side, it's discouraging us from doing something. If it's mentioned of something that may happen, it's rarely going to happen. So in is seldom to none. Idha is if, but it's like very likely, it's very often, very usually. Okay? And the examples I put in page number 3 are examples always in the Quran. They came in the meaning that I just told you. Always. Ayah number 43, 81. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدٍ. If Ar-Rahman has a son, so that's hypothetical. That if he has, it's in كَانَ لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدٍ. In Surah Al-Qasas, قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِنْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمُ اللَّيْلَ سَرْمَدًا. What if Allah made the night forever? There is no light. It's hypothetical. That's how in comes in the Quran. The next ayah is the same. قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِنْ جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمُ النَّهَارَ سَرْمَدًا. What if he made the light forever? There is no night. So it's again hypothetical. Look at ayah in Surah Al-A'raf, 7:143. You don't need to read the whole ayah, but just focus, I underline. This is the story of Musa alayhi salam when he told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, can I see you? So what did Allah answer? لكن you will not see me, but انظر إلى الجبل فإن استقر مكانه. If the mountain holds, it's not going to hold. It's in. Very unlikely that it will happen. So wherever in is mentioned, that is if it closed, that means it's not going to happen, or very rarely to happen, or dislikely to happen. Look at the either in the next examples I gave on the same page. In Surah Al-Jum'ah 62, number 10. فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةِ. If the salah finished, if you finish the prayer, that's very likely to happen. When you finish, more than if. When you finish the salah, then so and so. In Surah Al-Kahf, وَتَرَى الشَّمْسَ إِذَا طَلَعَتْ تَزَاوَرُ عَنْ كَهْفِهِمْ. If the sun rises, or again the right translation is when the sun rises, because the sun kept rising and sun setting, and they are sleeping in the cave. So wherever either mentioned means it's very likely to happen, or it happens a lot. If you flip the page to page number 4, you will see Surah Al-Takwir. I just put Surah Al-Takwir as example. All the events that will happen in the judgment day, it uses either, never in. In is unlikely. Those are happening. They will happen in the future. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. Either. When. And when you look at the translation of this ayah, it says when, because they are following the context in the translation. It's a translation of the meaning. So how is that linked to our ayah, to ayah number 3? The ayah starts with in. So that tells you that if you are fearing that you will be not fair with those orphans, that should be very unlikely to happen, then you may marry 2 or 3 or 4. That is the less likely to happen. So whoever tells you that, this is the common, look at Islam, and some Muslims take this ayah out of context. They just read it from مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. If you fear that you will not be just, then 1. So it's the exception to be 1. No, the exception is that there is multiple wives. That's a very rare exception. That's the language. Now another thing about the surah. وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى. تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى, I underline تُقْسِطُوا, and then فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا, and both are translated as if you are not just to the orphans, you may marry 2 or 3 or 4, and if you give anything the right amount. There is no 2 sides of taqsitu. It's 1 side. Example. Someone is providing for his or her children, and they are giving very less to all the children, not preferring someone on another. That looks like justice. Everyone is equal, right? Well, if they're saving the money and they're not providing for their kids, that's not qist. That's not fairness. That is the qist. There is no 2 sides. You're not comparing. The justice, the adl, is when there is 2 sides. And those 2 sides, there is preference that, someone is giving one of their children much more than the other, someone is giving the male or female more than the other, or someone's preferring one wife on the other if they have 2 wives. That is justice. So look at the accuracy of the Quran, the precision here, when it talks about if you cannot be fair to the yatama, to the orphans. Because it's not asking you to deal with the orphans that is living in your house like the way you're dealing with your wife. It's not supposed to be. So you just be fair to them. You be good to them. But if you decided to marry from outside and not marry those for the conditions that we just mentioned, those are 2 wives. In the Arabic culture, it's adl. You must be just to them. It cannot be fair. And this is another way this ayah is taken out of context. How? People read this ayah and say, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا, if you fear that you will not be just to the wives, and then they take you all the way to the end of the surah, to the ayat on page number 2, 428, 429. And they say, look at 429. وَلَنْ تَسْتَطِيعُوا أَن تَعْدِلُوا بَيْنَ النِّسَاءِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتُمْ. So they take you to this ayah and say, in translation, and you will never be able to be equal or just between wives. And then they tell you, you cannot be just between wives. It's Allah, He knows better, and He said that in the Quran. This is so out of context. The reason I put 4:128 and 4:129, it's totally different story here. So I'm going to tell you the story of 4:128, 4:129. You have the translation, I'm not going to go through it, but the story of our mother, Sauda bint Zam'a radiallahu anha. She was the second wife of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after Khadija radiallahu anha, and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married her when he was 50 years old. She was older than him. She was 55, and that was a few years after Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. But there is more details to that. She was married to a Muslim. She converted to Islam, and she traveled to Al-Habasha. And then her husband died, and she went back to Mecca. And all her family were not Muslims, so she had nowhere to go. Prophet Muhammad was single again. Khadija passed away, radiallahu anha, and then it was a good matchup. And she again has nowhere to go. So it was a logical marriage. And Prophet ﷺ married Sauda bint Zam'a radiallahu anha. Then he married other women, and then when they got old, this is in Tafseer by the way, I don't know if you heard this story before or not, Sauda was afraid that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is going to leave her. Now, there is no mention in the hadith or in any Tafseer. This is one of the things that I wanted to double check. I read again Tabari and Ibn Kathir to see if it's mentioning that there was intention that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ wanted to leave her. It doesn't say that. There is hadith and it's in the tafsir that she felt that, she's old now and he has other wives and she felt that he's going to leave her. So what did she do? She offered Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that you stay with me and I'm going to give my night to Aisha. That was after Prophet ﷺ married Aisha. So what happened is this ayah came to say that is okay to happen. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was spending the whole day and night with each wife, and only when it's bedtime that he leaves Sauda and he goes to Aisha, and all the wives were okay because Sauda offered her share to Aisha. So this ayah, the translation, وَإِنْ امْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا نُشُوزًا أَوْ إِعْرَاضًا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَنْ يُصْلِحَا. It's okay if they find an arrangement that does not have anything haram. That the arrangement was that we will stay together and they're happy and all of that, and she's okay with giving her night. That she figured this is better for me than being divorced at this age. So the regulation here, the rule, that is fine. This has nothing to do with the multiple wives that you can or cannot or should not be just to them. You must be just to them if that rare case happens that someone will have multiple wives. But taking this ayah 129 and merge it with the third verse is so out of context. This is the story of those ayah 128 and 129. Back to close the third verse, it says, if you fear that you will not be just, if there is an opportunity, even if the conditions of the society, of the demographic condition, that is okay for someone to have multiple wives, unless someone can assure the justice between them, You should stick to one or none. That's what the ayah says, or none. Or even don't marry if you cannot, be fair and just to one wife. So to close this ayah, I think I covered all the points that I wanted to cover. At the last ayah, the last part of the ayah number 3, ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَلَّا تَعُولُ. That is much better than being unjust. Even not marrying anyone is better than being unjust. That's the end of the ayah. So to close the third ayah, it says it's a rare condition, it's an exception that is accepted by the society, by the country, by the regulation, and by the culture of course, and may be supported by demographic conditions, that if someone in that condition, they may marry 2 or 3 or 4, in 2s or 3s, meaning the whole society, or most of the society, meaning it's a common thing in that society, and the exception of that that person must be just to the wives. It's not a question. If not, you don't marry 2, you don't even marry 1. Don't marry if you cannot be fair and just to that wife. This is the closure of the ayah. And indeed, it's not allowed and open as a rule for Islam for someone to marry 2 or 3 or 4 without a condition, without accepting the culture, as some people try to tell you. I know some people in this country, that they have a wife and they think that we will have a girlfriend, but we will have a marriage. We will bring a sheikh and 2 witnesses and all of that. The girlfriend is accepted in the society in this country, and I'm not doing anything haram. I have 2 wives in front of Allah. I know people who think that way, and more than one person. So that is not what's meant by the ayah. It's not that way by any means. Moving to the 4th verse of Surah Al Nisa'a, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلَةً فَإِن طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ نَفْسًا فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. This ayah talks about the money, since now it started from the orphans. 2 ayat about the orphans, orphan woman, marriage and woman. Now it's talking about an important topic. The money that the man gives to the woman, it's her right, totally. If the woman wants to give some of that money, it doesn't say some or all, just some. So most of the scholars say that the woman cannot give all of that, meaning there must be sadaq or mahar, or the money that is paid for the marriage to happen. If she wants to give some of that, nihla, the word that I highlighted there, nihla means what? It has 2 meanings, meaning that is the name of the money that is given to the bride, and it means the money that you give away from your own. And then, فَإِن طِبْنَ لَكُمْ, if they want to give some of that, nafsan, the other word that's highlighted, nafsan, totally from themselves, not as a pre-arrangement. Some people nowadays get married, but the family of the bride have strict conditions that you must pay so, and the gold is so and so, and then there is an arrangement. After the wedding, I'm going to take 90% of that and sell it. This is happening. This is not hypothetical. That is haram. That's a pre-arrangement. The bride did not give that on her own. That's why I highlighted this. وَمِنْ فَإِنْ طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِنْهُ نَفْسًا, from their own. If they want to give some of that, it's okay. فَقُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. Feel free to take it and enjoy it. That's what the ayah says. But not as a pre-arrangement. Yeah, I'll give you $10,000, but I'm going to borrow those so you look good in front of your cousins, but then you will give me those and I'll sell them 1 week after them. That's haram. That's what the ayah says. It's not allowed. The 5th ayah, وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ أَمْوَالَكُمُ الَّتِي جعل الله لكم قياما وارزقوهم فيها واكسوهم وقولوا لهم قولا معروفا.
The translation of that ayah will help me. It says, and do not give the weak-minded, the sufaha, your property. What does that mean? Is it allowed if someone has a weak-minded child that they do not give them some of the inheritance? Yes, it's allowed, under the condition that it's not preference of not giving this child because they don't like or so. It's don't give them the money because they will not know how to deal with the money. That's what the sufaha, the weak-minded, or the people that you should not give them the money. But it says, sufaha amwalakum, your money. It's not their money yet. Why it says your money? Because this must happen before the death. Now what happens is after someone passes away, the brothers and sisters start, oh no, she's not capable of that. Her husband is gonna take the money. So that's not what the ayah means. Or he will waste the money. I know my brother. That's none of your business. That's not what the ayah says. Look at the ayah. وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ أَمْوَالَكُمْ. If you feel that it's for their best interest, that you keep their money aside, so they don't waste it, that's okay. Allah reminds you that amwalakum, your money, that Allah made for you. He did not make them for your sons, but they eventually will go to your heirs, of course. And then, how to deal with them? How to deal with those weak-minded people? Just leave them? Give the money to the smarter kids and leave them? No, it says, وَارْزُقُوهُمْ فِيهَا. Give them what's enough for them. وَكْسُوهُمْ. رْزُقُوهُم, like the food, and ksuhum is the clothing, and all the basic needs. That's what it means. وَقُولُوا لَهُمْ قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. Be good to them. So the brothers or the heirs after that father pass away, they need to take care of the rest of the family, the weak-minded, and they need to give them from their share what's enough for them to live their life. So this sounds like people can override the inheritance. No, they cannot. This is for specific cases. Sufaha are the people who are proven that they will not be capable of spending the money in the right way on themselves. That's what the ayah is talking about. But it says that if the person before they pass away decided that, yes, I want the others to take care of my son or my daughter, that is okay, as long as they are nice to them, they're not, you're okay, you doesn't deserve this. That's not qawlan ma'rufa. And then give them what's enough for their basic needs. But if they inherited a couple of millions and the parent feels that they should not get the whole share and spend it in 2 weeks, that's okay to keep it with someone that will be in charge of that inheritance. That's what ayah number 4 means. Ayah number 5 means, sorry. I want to cover 2 more ayat in this quickly. The ayah number 6, وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا فَادْفَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُمْ. Continuation of ayah number 5, that you could test the orphans, those people that their parents left as orphans. Look here, the Quran expression is amazingly accurate. It says the orphans, not the sufaha anymore, because the money, the inheritance can be kept away if someone is weak-minded, sufaha, or if they're orphans. They're too young to give the money. So how to give the money? You just keep $10 million, and when they're 18, okay, here $10 million. That's not a good thing to do. So it says how to give that money to those people. If the weak-minded are feeling better now, they can deal with the money, they got treatment, they got therapy, and you feel that they can get their share. What do we do with those two cases? وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى. What does ابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى? Test them. Don't give them the $10 million. Give them $30,000 and see how they're going to deal with it. Who's giving the money now? Who's giving that money? Decided to give 30 or 50. That's someone the parent will decide. That is the wali that will get the money. That my son or my daughter is not capable of spending the money. So what do? You give that, hey, the share of my son, you will keep the money, and then you're in charge. Because that person will pass away. So now the person in charge will decide if it's time to give the money. This ayah says how to give the money. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى. Test them. Give them little money. How are they going to spend it? You give them 100,000. They buy a Ferrari. No, they're not ready to get the $10 million. They can spend it in 3 weeks. So look at the word that I underlined there. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ. The reason I underline this, just because it goes with the context about the إِذَا. What does إِذَا mean? Very likely to happen. حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحَ. When they reach the age of maturity, then give them the money or test them. فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا. فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم. What does N mean? Less likely. How many times there is a person that you don't feel that they are capable to manage the money, they will switch to become capable of managing the money. That's not very often. So the word is used here is in. You see how the Quran used the terms? It's not random. Ida and in. You check in the whole Quran, it's always the same. Wherever it's ida, most likely. In, less likely to none. So if that happened, it's rarely to happen that a kid who his or her parents decided that they should not get the inheritance and give the money to someone because they don't think they're capable of managing the money, will become capable of managing the money. But if that happened, Quran should cover that case. If that happened, give them their money. If that happened, you must give them their money. It's not your money. You took this money, you got this money from their parents just temporarily because their parents decided they're not capable of managing that amount of money. So if that happened, it's rarely to happen, you must pay them their money total. And then the rest of the ayah, I'm not going to go word by word, it just says, if that person who kept the money for the orphans or for the weak-minded, now that sometimes lasts for 10 or 20 years or for a lifetime. So are they allowed to use some of that money? The answer is yes. The details in the translation, you can read it, but it says that the person should use money only if they need. If someone has enough money for themselves, then they should not touch the money of the orphans. And it's better if they don't touch that money, unless they're in real need. And there is hadith, I'm not going to get into those hadith, in the Sahih, that someone asked the Prophet that I have orphans and I have money, I don't have enough money to eat, and then the Prophet allowed them to use some of that money on average scale, just to, it's not logical that they keep $10 million for the orphans and they don't have income, they don't have food in the house. So yes, they can use some money, but not use all the money. Don't be over or under in spending from that money. That's what the rest of the ayah. And the last ayah I'm going to cover today is ayah number 7. Ayah number 7, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ مِمَّا قَلَّ مِنْهُ أَوْ كَثُرَ نَصِيبًا مَفْرُوضًا. So the translation exactly says, for men is a share of what their parents and close relatives leave, and for women is a share of what the parents and close relatives leave. Before I finish the ayah, it sounds like outside the Quran, we once said those sentences in that way. You don't say men has a share from what the relatives and parents leave. Women will have share from what the parents and relatives leave. There is other ways, right? You can say men and women have share from what their parents leave, for example. That's grammar-wise is more suitable. Or you can say men have a share from what the men and from what parents leave, but at the same time, women also. But that will give a preference. That will give a preference to the men. In an Arabic society, that does not give the woman any inheritance at that time. So look at the ayah. In my opinion, my personal opinion, the surah was in Nisa after this particular ayah. And that's why I wanted to reach this ayah number 7. It says, men has a share from what parents and relatives leave. Women have a share from what parents and relatives leave. This is like symmetrical on purpose because Allah wanted to bring the attention that as long as men has share from what there is left over, woman has a share from what was left over. It's symmetrical on purpose to bring that attention to the society that does not give anything to the woman. It doesn't want to give a preference that men has a preference and women also, and women too. So that is something you need to look at. The other thing, what if that leftover, the inheritance is not big? Some people left just hundreds of dollars or $1,000. Well, it doesn't matter. Men and women, it doesn't matter. What happened in some Muslim communities, that if the money is not big, the brothers will take it, especially if the females are married, so and her husband has money, so it's okay. Let the brothers take all the money, because it makes sense. They have more obligations. It says مِمَّا قَلَّ مِنْهُ أَوْ كَثُرَ. Doesn't matter the amount of the money, the amount of inheritance. مِمَّا قَلَّ مِنْهُ أَوْ كَثُرَ. If it's less or more, it's the same. نصيبا مفروضا. That is a share that is fard, that is mandatory by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this ayah you need to, in my opinion, to memorize it. للرجال نصيب مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون وللنساء نصيب مما ترك الوالدان والأقربون مما قل منه أو كثر نصيبا مفروضا. This ayah tells you the whole thing about the surah. The rest of the surah is just details about this. This surah, Surat Al Nisa'a, after this, as I mentioned, talks about money till the verse number 13. And in those ayah, it starts talking about the details of the inheritance, and there is lots of topics about society and men and women and who's allowed to marry who and who's not allowed to marry who, from the Mohareb, what we call the aunts, etc., the khalat, and it talks about other topics like the men and women relation, some of the divorce also. It is called Surat Al Nisa'a Al-Kubra, the big woman chapter. The small woman chapter is Surat Al-Talaq, the divorce chapter. This is a surah that has lots and lots of rules and regulations that does not exist in any other surah. It's a must to understand these regulations. It's not just at the time of inheritance. It is very important to understand these regulations and rules because they touch with our lives. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this in this surah and in other surahs subhanahu wa ta'ala. I encourage all of you to read the printouts of this ayah and compare these ayahs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among the people who listen to the Quran and learn and memorize it. Ameen. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.